Good evening, everyone. Today we delve into a subject that's hard to talk about but necessary for our personal growth and community well-being: identifying harmful behavior, particularly when it comes from those who appear close to us. This talk is not about condemning or casting judgment, but about becoming aware and learning how to protect ourselves from destructive energy. We all have relationships in our lives that shape us. Some build us up, while others, unfortunately, can tear us down. While it's important to always act with compassion, it's equally important to learn how to recognize signs of toxicity when they manifest. Understanding these signs not only protects us, but empowers us to make healthier choices for ourselves. Emotional manipulation is one of the most insidious tactics used by those who seek to control and ruin others. It's often a subtle form of psychological abuse, where the manipulator twists situations to make others feel guilty, fearful, or uncertain about their own worth. Unlike straightforward forms of manipulation, emotional manipulation is designed to target a person's emotions, making them second-guess themselves and their reality. In many cases, an emotionally manipulative person will use guilt as their primary weapon. They may make others feel responsible for their unhappiness or emotional distress, subtly implying that if others truly cared, they would act in a certain way. For instance, they might say, "I'm so upset, and it's because of you," or "if you really loved me, you would do this for me." These statements are designed to make the target feel personally responsible for the manipulator's emotions, even though it may not be true. Over time, this creates a sense of unease in the target, causing them to question their own decisions or actions. Another tactic involves the use of fear. Manipulators often instill fear by suggesting dire consequences if their demands are not met. They might warn that their own emotional well-being is on the line, subtly threatening that a failure to comply will result in emotional withdrawal, punishment, or even a severed relationship. Fear becomes a tool to control, and it makes the target act not out of love or desire, but out of a desperate need to avoid negative consequences. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of emotional manipulation is its ability to prey on vulnerability. Many manipulators are highly skilled at identifying the weaknesses and insecurities of those around them. They exploit these vulnerabilities by providing false comfort or affection in return for compliance. The manipulator may present themselves as the victim, feeding on the other person's desire to help or protect them, but in reality, they are using the victim's kindness, empathy, and desire for approval as a means to further their own goals. This creates a toxic dynamic where one person's emotional well-being is consistently sacrificed for the other's gain. Manipulation may also involve gaslighting, an extreme form of emotional manipulation. This is where the manipulator tries to convince the victim that their perceptions are wrong or distorted, causing them to question their own reality. For example, the manipulator might deny something they clearly said or did, forcing the victim to feel confused and uncertain about their own thoughts and feelings. Gaslighting is particularly dangerous because it undermines a person's self-trust and erodes their confidence in their own ability to make decisions. In the long term, emotional manipulation can cause severe damage to a person's self-esteem, mental health, and overall sense of identity. The person being manipulated becomes trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and guilt, and the manipulator benefits from this emotional vulnerability as it keeps the target under their control. Over time, the manipulator builds a narrative where they appear to be the one in need of help or the one suffering, while the other person is left emotionally drained and uncertain about their own intentions. Recognizing emotional manipulation requires keen self-awareness and an understanding of healthy boundaries. While a manipulative person might disguise their actions with kindness or feigned concern, the underlying intent is always about power and control. This is often where dominant people end up losing their lives, as they're so involved in managing a manipulator's feelings that they fail to recognize it's crucial for individuals to trust their own emotions and instincts, assert their boundaries, and distance themselves from those who use their vulnerabilities as leverage. One of the most destructive behaviors of a person who seeks to ruin others is their ability to instigate conflict. These individuals thrive in environments of tension, division, and chaos, often going to great lengths to create discord where none previously existed. Their goal is not merely to argue or disagree, but to disrupt harmony, sow distrust, and pit people against each other for their own benefit. Whether in personal relationships, workplaces, or social circles, these individuals work in the shadows to create division. The most common way such individuals instigate conflict is by planting seeds of doubt and suspicion between people. They often do this by subtly or overtly spreading rumors and misinformation. They know how to exploit sensitive information, taking fragments of conversations, twisting them and passing them on to others with the intent of sparking tension. For example, they might share something in confidence and later distort that information when talking to someone else, manipulating the story to make one party seem unreasonable or malicious. This can create a divide between friends, colleagues, or even family members, leaving people questioning each other's motives, actions, and loyalty. At times, the conflict instigators may take on the role of the neutral party. They may sit in the background, listening intently to conversations, and then strategically repeat what others have said, often adding their own twist, or in doing so, they may present themselves as a mediator or voice of reason, all the while fueling a sense of division. By offering their opinion in a subtle, persuasive way, they can incite reactions without directly taking responsibility for the conflict that arises. These individuals often target relationships that seem to be stable and harmonious because they know that their presence can disrupt the peace. When they see people who trust one another, they begin to slowly undermine that trust. For example, they might criticize one person to another, saying things like, "Have you noticed how Agatha always does this?" Or, "I can't believe Agatha does that." By fostering an atmosphere of distrust, they force people to question the reliability of those they once considered friends or allies. Instigating conflict can also be a form of control. By causing rifts between others, the manipulator positions themselves as the one who understands the situation or sees things clearly. They may try to align themselves with one party, positioning themselves as an ally or confidant, all while further dividing the group. This sense of being on the inside gives them power, as they become the go-to person for advice or perspective, even though their true intention is to weaken the bonds between those involved. They may even feign concern for the well-being of others, masking their manipulative intentions under a veneer of kindness. Moreover, a conflict instigator rarely resolves issues directly. They may encourage people to argue, but avoid getting involved in the resolution. This leaves the victims in a state of confusion, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. The manipulator knows that unresolved conflict creates an environment of ongoing tension, and by keeping the fight alive, they maintain control. In some cases, these individuals may deliberately escalate conflicts, pushing buttons and provoking reactions just to watch the chaos unfold. They feed off the drama, enjoying the power they wield in keeping others in a state of emotional turmoil. One of the more dangerous aspects of this behavior is that it is often difficult to spot in the moment. The instigator may appear calm, composed, and even caring on the surface. However, they are working behind the scenes, carefully maneuvering to maintain the conflict they've started. As people in the affected group try to make are often designed to provoke doubt and spark disagreements, leading others to question their own views and relationships. Over time, this tactic can lead to the breakdown of trust and unity, especially if the instigator is successful in dividing individuals who once had strong bonds. Friendships crumble, work teams falter, and family relationships are strained, all because of the manipulator's constant need for conflict. In the worst case scenario, those affected might never fully understand that a single individual has been working behind the scenes to orchestrate this destruction. Recognizing the behavior of conflict instigation is key to protecting oneself from further harm. It requires a combination of awareness, communication, and setting firm boundaries. When you notice someone trying to divide or manipulate those around you, it's crucial to take a step back, evaluate the situation carefully, and confront the behavior directly if possible. By doing so, you not only protect yourself, but also help to restore harmony and prevent further chaos from taking root. One of the most telling signs of a toxic person, especially someone who seeks to ruin others, is their consistent refusal to take responsibility for their actions. Accountability is an essential aspect of personal growth and integrity. It involves owning one's decisions, acknowledging mistakes, and taking steps to rectify the harm caused. However, individuals who manipulate others to fulfill their own desires or create chaos often refuse to accept any responsibility for their negative actions. Instead, they deflect blame, manipulate perceptions, and shift responsibility onto others, all to avoid the discomfort of facing their own flaws and mistakes. At the heart of avoiding accountability is the manipulation of truth. These individuals often present themselves in a way that makes it difficult for others to see the full picture. When something goes wrong, they will typically craft a narrative that minimizes their role, exaggerates others' faults, and portrays themselves as the victim. Instead of acknowledging the impact of their behavior, they turn the situation around, making it seem as though the fault lies with someone else. This tactic is designed to shift focus away from their actions, giving them the freedom to continue with their destructive behavior while leaving others to deal with the fallout. One of the most common ways people avoid accountability is by deflecting blame. They may not directly admit to their wrongdoings, but instead redirect attention elsewhere. For example, when confronted about a hurtful action, they might say, "Well, you did this first," or "If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had to react the way I did." By shifting the blame onto others, they ensure that they are never held accountable for their own behavior. This tactic leaves the other person feeling confused, defensive, and unsure of how to respond, because instead of engaging in a meaningful conversation about the issue at hand, they are forced to defend themselves against accusations. Another form of avoiding accountability involves minimizing the consequences of one's actions. Instead of recognizing the impact their behavior has on others, a person who avoids accountability will often downplay the situation, dismissing the concerns of those affected. They might say things like, "It wasn't that big of a deal," or "You're overreacting." This type of denial can be particularly harmful because it invalidates the feelings and experiences of the other person. When someone refuses to take responsibility for their actions and instead dismisses the harm they've caused, it not only perpetuates the cycle of harm, but also prevents any real healing or growth from taking place. In addition to deflecting blame and minimizing harm, those who avoid accountability often engage in what is known as gaslighting. This is a psychological manipulation tactic where the person tries to make the victim question their own perceptions and memories. For example, if confronted about a lie or inconsistency, a manipulative person might respond with, "That never happened," or "You're imagining things." The goal is to make the other person doubt their reality, which can lead them to feel confused, anxious, and unsure of themselves. This can be particularly dangerous because it erodes the victim's sense of self-trust and can make them dependent on the manipulator's version of events. People who avoid accountability may also rely on the tactic of emotional blackmail to avoid facing the consequences of their actions. They may use guilt or shame to manipulate others into feeling responsible for their well-being. For instance, they may say things like, "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't make me feel this way." Or, "I don't know what I would do without you." This puts an immense emotional burden on the other person, who is now made to feel that holding the manipulator accountable for their actions is somehow unfair or unkind. The emotional manipulation obscures the real issue, making it difficult for anyone involved to address the harm done. Perhaps one of the most subtle yet effective ways of avoiding accountability is through the tactic of silent treatment or passive-aggressive behavior. Instead of engaging in direct confrontation, the manipulator may withdraw, ignore, or passive-aggressively sabotage the situation. They may avoid conversations about the issue entirely, leaving the other person to deal with their emotions alone. In doing so, they avoid taking any responsibility for the situation while maintaining control over the emotional dynamic. This type of behavior can leave the victim feeling helpless and emotionally exhausted, as they are left without closure or resolution. By avoiding accountability, the manipulator maintains a sense of power and control because no real conversations are being had about the issues at hand. They can continue to act in a harmful manner without the risk of facing consequences. Over time, this lack of accountability fosters an environment where people are afraid to speak up, where honesty is avoided, and where trust erodes. The manipulator becomes the center of the narrative, while everyone else is left questioning their own role in the situation. Furthermore, those who refuse to take responsibility for their actions tend to become very skilled at redirecting attention to their own grievances. They may exaggerate their own suffering or challenges in a way that makes it difficult for others to focus on the actual issue. By framing themselves as the one who is wronged or the one who is in pain, they make it hard for others to address their own grievances without feeling guilty or insensitive. This emotional manipulation prevents any real accountability from being taken and ensures that the focus remains on the manipulator's needs and desires. Recognizing the signs of someone avoiding accountability is crucial for protecting oneself from ongoing harm. When dealing with such individuals, it's important to stay grounded in the truth, maintain clear boundaries, and refuse to accept blame for their actions. Accountability is the cornerstone of healthy relationships, and without it, there can be no real growth, resolution, or healing. Holding people accountable, including ourselves, is essential for fostering respect, trust, and mutual understanding in all areas of life. Empathy is the cornerstone of meaningful and compassionate human relationships. It is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, to see the world through their eyes, and to respond with care and consideration. A person who lacks empathy, however, is fundamentally disconnected from the emotional experiences of others. They are unable or unwilling to recognize the pain, joy, or struggles of those around them. And as a result, their actions are often self-centered, hurtful, and damaging. In the context of an individual seeking to ruin others, the absence of empathy is one of the most glaring signs of their harmful intent. A lack of empathy manifests in many ways, often subtly at first, but becoming more apparent as the person's behavior becomes more harmful. The most striking aspect of such an individual is their inability to feel or show concern for others' emotions. When someone is suffering, they may remain unable to grasp the gravity of the situation or the emotional toll it is taking on the person involved. Instead of offering comfort, support, or kindness, they may dismiss the other person's pain, offering cold or callous responses like, "It's not a big deal," or "You'll get over it." These dismissals not only invalidate the other person's experience, but also create an environment where their emotional needs are overlooked and unacknowledged. In more extreme cases, a lack of empathy may show itself as outright cruelty. People who cannot empathize with others are often oblivious to the impact of their words and actions. They may make hurtful comments without a second thought, not considering how their words might land on someone else. For example, they may mock someone's appearance, criticize their abilities, or belittle their experiences in a way that causes emotional harm. Because they cannot connect with the feelings of others, they are completely unaware of the emotional damage they cause. Worse still, they may even find satisfaction in the discomfort or pain of others, deriving a sense of power from making someone feel small or inferior. A lack of empathy also creates a significant barrier to healthy communication. Empathy allows people to listen not just to words, but to the emotions behind them. When a person lacks empathy, they fail to truly listen. Instead of trying to understand the feelings or perspectives of others, they focus only on their own point of view. They may interrupt, dismiss, or talk over others, never pausing to acknowledge the emotional nuances of the conversation. This inability to engage meaningfully with others leaves relationships shallow and unfulfilling, as there is little emotional connection or genuine understanding. And in addition to direct harm, a lack of empathy can lead to a general disregard for the well-being of others. An individual with little empathy is unlikely to offer help or support when someone else is struggling, whether it's failing to show up for someone in need, refusing to lend a hand when it's required, or simply ignoring the needs of those around them. Their self-centered nature creates an environment where only their desires matter. They may become irritated or annoyed when others express vulnerability, seeing it as an inconvenience rather than an opportunity to offer care or comfort. This lack of consideration can alienate people, leaving them feeling unsupported, alone, and emotionally drained. One of the most insidious aspects of a person who lacks empathy is their ability to mask their coldness with superficial charm. In social settings, they may present themselves as friendly, approachable, and even caring, while underneath, they remain disconnected from the feelings of others. They may make surface-level comments such as, "I'm so sorry to hear that," or "That must be hard for you," but these words are hollow, spoken more out of social obligation than a genuine desire to understand or help. Their emotional responses are often disconnected or robotic, showing no true investment in the emotional well-being of the other person. This mask of friendliness allows them to blend in and avoid suspicion, but their lack of empathy becomes clear over time, especially in moments of emotional vulnerability. Furthermore, individuals who lack empathy are often quick to rationalize or justify their harmful actions. Instead of acknowledging the hurt they have caused, they may reframe their behavior as practical or necessary, excusing their actions as though they were simply unavoidable. They may say things like, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," or "They should have known better." This is a direct result of their inability to put themselves in the other person's shoes and consider how their actions might have affected someone else. They do not have the emotional capacity to understand the complexities of human suffering, so they justify their behavior in ways that allow them to avoid responsibility. One particularly troubling aspect of a lack of empathy is the way it erodes trust in relationships. Empathy forms the emotional foundation that enables trust to develop and flourish between people. Without empathy, trust becomes impossible to build. A person who repeatedly demonstrates a lack of concern for the feelings of others will create an atmosphere of unpredictability where emotional safety is compromised. Those around them may feel they cannot rely on this individual to offer support, care, or understanding, leading to strained relationships, emotional exhaustion, and in some cases, complete disengagement. Over time, those who experience a lack of empathy may withdraw emotionally, protect themselves from further hurt, or even distance themselves entirely from the person causing harm. In more extreme cases, a lack of empathy can lead to abusive or toxic behavior. Abusers, manipulators, and those with harmful intent often exhibit a profound lack of empathy for their victims, seeing them as objects to be controlled or used rather than people with their own emotions, needs, and desires. This complete detachment from the emotional reality of others is what allows individuals to act without remorse, exploiting, abusing, or ruining others without any real consideration for the damage they cause. It's in these extreme scenarios that the true dangers of a lack of empathy become most apparent, as it creates a psychological and emotional vacuum where cruelty can thrive unchecked. The absence of empathy is not just a personal flaw, it's a destructive force that can tear apart relationships, communities, and even entire systems. People who lack empathy are often incapable of building the deep, meaningful connections that are essential to healthy, thriving environments. Recognizing the signs of a lack of empathy and understanding its destructive nature is critical in protecting ourselves and others from harm. We must be vigilant about the impact that such individuals have on those around them and take steps to protect our emotional well-being, while also striving to foster empathy in our own interactions. By doing so, we can create a world where connection, understanding, and care are prioritized, and where the toxic influence of those who lack empathy is diminished. In conclusion, the signs of an individual who seeks to ruin others are not always obvious, but when we look closely, patterns emerge that reveal toxic behavior. Emotional manipulation, instigating conflict, avoiding accountability, and lacking empathy are all hallmarks of a person who operates in the shadows, causing harm without regard for the consequences. These individuals thrive on creating chaos, breaking down trust, and feeding off the emotional vulnerability of those around them. However, it's essential to remember that the power to protect ourselves from such harm lies in awareness and self-respect. By recognizing the signs of these toxic behaviors early on, we can build boundaries, maintain emotional safety, and manage our internal reactions so well that we can learn to live one of the biggest symptoms of these things and its connection to our emotion, and prioritize our own well-being. Understanding the manipulative tactics of those who seek to damage others allows us to respond with clarity and strength, safeguarding our peace of mind and the relationships that truly matter. Ultimately, the road to healing and growth lies in surrounding ourselves with people who are empathetic, accountable, and committed to fostering harmony. While we cannot control the actions of others, we can control how we respond to them. And we have the ability to distance ourselves from harmful relationships that threaten our emotional stability. We must also recognize that true power and strength come from embracing compassion, understanding, and respect for one another. In doing so, we contribute to a world where the destructive influence of those who seek to ruin others is diminished, and where healthy, nurturing relationships are given the space to flourish. Thank you.